everybody. This is your host, Sophia Nelson, and welcome to the Redefining Freedom podcast. We're happy to have as our guest today someone who's a good friend of mine, who is a longtime Politico. He knows politics, he knows California. We have Mike Madrid with us. Now, Mike is someone who, in my opinion and in the world's opinion, is an expert when it comes to Latino voting trends. He is one of the top pollsters in this country. If I ever ran for office, I'd want him running my stuff. Mike is the author of the 2024 book, The Latino Century, and he's also a co-founder of the Lincoln Project. And he's a never Trumper. I think that's fair to say. I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah.
But Mike is somebody who I think in this moment that we are in, with everything that's happening in Los Angeles, in our country, in our politics, and in our communities, I think he is the voice for this moment. So, Mike, welcome to the Redefining Freedom Center's podcast. Let's open with this. Set the table for us. First, tell us what's going on out in Los Angeles where you are, but more importantly, set the table for where we are from January, the inauguration of Donald Trump 2.0, up till now. Where are we?
Well, first, let me say, Sophia, you're a dear friend, and I'm a fierce advocate for you and your voice out there. I think what you're doing is extraordinary, and I think there aren't enough voices out there that have been, I think, as effective as yours has. But I also want you to know how truly valuable I think your unique perspective is as a woman of color, as somebody who was involved in Republican politics. You bring a blend and balanced, measured, common sense approach to where this country needs to head, but you also have the fierceness of understanding how to fight in this arena. So thank you for everything that you're doing. You're a great American. And it's always a pleasure to be with you, of course, and get caught up. This administration's second time around is foundationally different. It just is. A lot of it has to do with simple competence, and not that these are the best people in the world running the operation. In many ways, we were saved during the first administration from the sheer incompetence and the bumbling fools who had no idea how to manage the day-to-day operations of the workings of the awesome power and size of the federal government. That's not quite the case this time, and they're certainly hitting that point now, 150 days into this thing, where they are starting to hit some of the problems of not being able to just take a chainsaw to the bureaucracy and thinking that that's going to solve some of the problems. A lot of it is just the practical part of the runnings of something the size and scope of the United States government. But what is also different is the direct tone and tenor that is coming from those that Trump has surrounded himself with. Let's remember that the first time there were people who, while they enabled him, they were functionaries. They were people that would guide him away from his darkest tendencies, those dark angels of Trump's nature, which tends to consume him, usually late night watching Fox News, waking up the next morning and saying, let's go do this. There would be people that were professionals, that were genuinely concerned about the country, that would guide him off of some of, again, his more dangerous tendencies. Those are all gone. Those guardrails are gone. And so the idea of somehow, going after those who are here undocumented, those who birthright citizenship, which of course is central to the whole idea of America and not questioning the identity of people and their Americanness. The notion that you can send in Marines and federal troops to go into people's homes and to round people up, people who are otherwise very, very hardworking for slave labor wages, basically, doing the work that we don't want to do so that we can have a lower cost quality of life, is something that strikes at, again, not just Americanness, but just human decency. And so over the course of the past 5 months, as Trump has been president, he obviously ran on this. There were, signs and placards at the floor of the Republican National Convention, chants of mass deportations, as contrasting from the build the wall messaging in 2016, which was, stop people from coming in. This was like, let's get people who are here out. And he was viewed, unfortunately, very positively on that. It was one of the great strengths that he had during the presidential campaign. It was the single largest divide between him and Kamala Harris, him and Joe Biden, was their support for border security. And was up until the last few days the last issue where he was polling above 50%. Everything else, all the chaos, the Liberation Day stuff that came with the tariff that rattled the markets, we're now seeing that the tourism impacts of his language and people stopping to coming from the United States has created a $1 trillion loss globally in the global economy. His rhetoric is changing literally the global economy.
In that for a moment, you raise a good point. What do you think is going to happen with the World Cup and the Olympics and the impact that what the world sees America vis-a-vis Donald Trump doing right now? If I'm a person from another country, particularly a person of color, I'm not coming to the United States. What do you think about that?
Yeah, not just for those security reasons, which is obviously in the back of a lot of people's minds, but as a political statement to say, I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to spend my money there. I think that that's going to be a very significant problem for the United States. We are at the polling, if not at the lowest point, pretty close to the lowest point in the history of modern polling globally. We have lost the respect of the world. A lot of people, especially in Western Europe, have always thought we were, kind of quirky Americans, but okay, they're our quirky leader, and they've got this umbrella that protects us. That's all gone. The debate as to whether or not, we're talking right now, recording right now while Iran is bombing, Israel after Israel's, initial strikes, whether or not Israel did that unilaterally or not. Marco Rubio is saying they did do it. Our Secretary of State, Donald Trump, is now trying to take credit for it. It's clear that even our closest allies don't believe us. They don't trust us, and are acting unilaterally without us. That's a dangerous new world, and it is directly a result of the loss of confidence by the overt attacks by Donald Trump on close allies like Mexico and Canada and Western Europe. If they can't trust us, nobody can trust us. And that is the world that we're entering now. That is the next phase of global history.
So then if I were kind of to summarize what you've said here, from the moment he got inaugurated in January until now, which is June, we're 6 months into this new year, 5 months into his term, he's literally turned the world upside down. I don't think that's hyperbole. I mean, with the tariff wars, with the and by the way, those change depending on his whim. The things he's doing with cryptocurrency and selling pardons, quite literally, the emoluments clause has been obliterated. That no longer exists. I guess when you add that and then look at the actions of ICE and the way we're treating our fellow human beings, I don't give a damn if you got a green card or you don't have a green card. And I'm saying this as somebody who loves her country, who believes in law and order. And I think Mike and I would agree we want immigration laws enforced. We want them enforced equally. Not just black and brown people got different laws than people who are not black and brown, and don't make me go there today. And just the way we talk about people and the way we treat them, we ought to have a path for the people that are here. They need a path to be citizens. We need to figure that out. They're our neighbors, our friends. They're married into our families. They're our nieces, our nephews, our brothers, our sisters. I mean, and at the end of the day, as Mike and I were talking about off camera, there is no illegal human being, not in God's sight anyway. So, Mike, I think when we add all this up, we're in a dark place, right?
Yeah.
So as a pollster, as someone who's an expert in voting trends, et cetera, tell me what happened in the 2024 election. How did someone like this, we already knew everything about Donald Trump. All the baggage was out there, the law breaking, the 34 felonies. Yes, your president is a convicted felon, folks. That's just a fact, like it or not. And so how did the country, I mean, I guess my deeper worry, Mike, is not so much what Trump's doing, that's bad enough, but 77 million people voted for this, or did they? Thoughts?
I don't think they voted for this as much as they were voting against the incumbent party. And I think it's really important for listeners of your show to understand something. Most of the discussion about democracy and authoritarianism and even the racism stuff, a lot of this stuff is kind of flying at the 30,000 foot level with people who know and can give us a good definition of authoritarianism. When you get to a broader swath of particularly working class people and lower information voters, they're essentially voting on a referendum on the party in power. Are things working or are they not? And it's easy to say, well, how can you vote for the price of eggs when a dictator is on the rise. And that's a very fair question. I don't want to be dismissive of that, but I do want to say this. As somebody who grew up in a household that never quite made it from paycheck to paycheck, if you're spending over half of your family's income every month on rent or a mortgage, you know what the price of eggs is because you know what the price of everything is. When you can't turn on the heat because you can't pay the bill, you're already 2 months in arrears on the bill, and you got to wrap up in a blanket with your brothers and sisters and everybody else to keep warm. I grew up like that. I understand that mentality. You don't have the luxury of thinking about whether authoritarianism is on the rise. So much of it doesn't matter when you're not making it anyway.
So putting that, as Oprah would say, that's an aha moment. You're making a really good point about what people were focused on and what matters. And they sometimes don't get the stuff that those of us that are in the Washington elite or in the Beltway or in this game like we are, we can have these high level conversations.
Yeah, and that was why I was so critical. And look, I was communicating with the White House and trying to help out with the Biden-Harris team in saying this focus on democracy and authoritarianism is not a good message for the people you need. You already have people that understand the real threat and can communicate that. We've been there all along. The problem is you're slipping with Black and brown working class people who are basically saying, I'm not surprised that the guy's racist. I know he's racist, but I also know that if I keep going down this road, I may not have my job. I can't feed my kids. Like things are not good. And you keep telling me things are good and that I should be worried about, these two politicians are fighting about who's more of a dictator and who's not. That's just it's just noise.
Let's turn that because I think, and I was very involved in the Harris campaign, sorority sister, did events, everything. One of the things I kept screaming to the leadership at the highest level was, you're missing the culture wars here. You're missing it. Yes, democracy's at stake. Yes, American values at stake. Yes, we ought to support Ukraine through NATO. Of course. However, that is not what the people of this country are focused on right now.
That's right.
People of this country are focused on right now is things that maybe the Democrats, and I want you to talk about this, didn't want to talk about. Like, did the Democrats lurch so far left on the culture issues, whether it's LGBTQ rights, trans rights, what you can say, what you can't say? Diversity, equity, inclusion is a damn good thing. It's what our country is, e pluribus unum out of many one. However, did you message in such a way or enact programs and things in such a way that you alienated others? Curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have a slightly different perspective on this, a little bit more nuanced. And I agree with everything that you said, by the way. But it's not that there was a backlash against these ideas. Although I think there's clearly been some cultural drift where the Democrats have, taken positions outside of, mainstream culture. There's no question about that. And they've emphasized them. Maybe too much. But the reason why is it's not that people are necessarily as opposed to that, especially working class people and Black and brown people who get diversity, equity, inclusion. It's like, we get that. We're with you on that. It's that those issues are prioritized almost exclusively when the institutions that help people get along every day have failed them. The Democratic Party has a real trust problem with working class people and people of color, because for 30 years, for Latinos, for 50 years with Black Americans, they have overwhelmingly given them their votes. And life has not materially gotten better.
With little return.
Very little return. And so that's a long time to be waiting. There's a lot of patience to give to say, okay, make it better. Okay, I'm with you. Okay, we'll show up for you. Okay, we'll pull the lever for you. After decades and decades and decades, the DEI stuff isn't enough because it doesn't matter. Like if I vote for that and nothing's going to get better, what does it matter?
Okay, Harris, play devil's advocate. Harris had a plan for caregiving for your senior parents or for a loved one. Harris had a plan to help you get that home and give you a down payment. Harris had a plan to do all these things. Like she literally addressed these issues, but for some reason, Trump got up there and talked about Hannibal Lecter and all kind of batshit crazy stuff, and he still got the votes. Yeah. You got to help my audience and me understand why didn't they hear what she said? Because any objective observer, everything you and I've set aside, we know the Democrats have had a a problem and a drift. But Harris seemed to me to be working real hard to say, I get these issues. You can't afford to buy a home. You can't afford your student loans. Your medical debt shouldn't be used against you on your credit report. It seems like she was talking about those things, but it didn't matter.
It didn't matter, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Everybody listen real good here.
Listen up, y'all.
The reason is because she had a government solution to every problem. When the trust in government that had not been providing solutions for decades was still posited. There was nothing that she was going to say or government program she was going to come up with that was going to change people's minds anymore. That's what it was. And Donald Trump was talking madness, but what he was also saying was, these guys are the problem. That was 90% of the debate. See, the Democratic Party, you have to understand something. As the Republican Party that we knew has disappeared and lost its ideological core. The Republican Party is no longer a party about small government and conservative governance. It is a party that is populist, nationalist, and is trying to tear institutions down. The Democratic Party has filled that void. It's literally a coalition party between AOC and Liz Cheney. Because what it's saying is, when it's saying protect democracy, it's saying protect our institutions. And in a populist moment, when people don't believe in institutions, there's nothing you can sell that people are buying anymore.
Right, that's good. That's so good. Again, Oprah moment, tweetable, aha.
And that's why it didn't matter. No, people didn't want a policy solution coming from the government. It wasn't making a difference. There was a big hype about Build Back Better, major infrastructure investment. Of course, these are 10 or 15 years down the road, but people's lives got worse with inflation. And the Democrats would just say, well, the stock market's doing great. Look at the economic indicators. Everything's doing great. And it's like, my dollar is worth 20% less than it was 6 months ago. Like, this is real. It hurts.
So talk about that then. Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Talk about those programs that we know in this big, beautiful bill that I think the Senate's going to try to do a number on to some degree as much as they can. Because I think Republicans are starting to panic. And I want you to talk about that when they see these poll numbers cratering and the midterms coming up, which we'll get to next. But talk to me about this. If people don't like government and institutions or feel like they failed, why is there such concern about Social Security, Medicare, SNAP benefits, AFDC, and et cetera going away then?
Well, remember, the fear is about the government and who's in control of the government right now. It's Republicans. And that's a big part of it, right? It's not, I think we're missing something when we look at politics the way you and I did when we were maybe a little bit younger and working on the Hill. When we're like, do you want more government or less government? Is this a good program or a bad program? Is this popular or not? And like I said, there is such a strong sentiment that runs, it strains in both parties. This is not a problem particular to the Republican Party, by the way. It's consumed the Republican Party. Like, that's almost all that's left. But this is about half of the Democratic Party too, and getting stronger, right? So the party that is in power, no matter who it is, automatically has a massive disadvantage going forward. But the Republicans are trying to promote a really bad bill. This big, beautiful bill does really bad stuff. And it doesn't do anything except for really make the rich richer. And that's coming from a Republican who's been doing this for a long time, who's like supports tax increases and stuff. It's like, this stuff is so far out of control and so crazy. Like, you're losing Republicans on this stuff. This is nuts.
I encourage folks who are watching us to go read the CBO summaries. I don't expect you to read some 3,000 page bill. But there are summaries that are nonpartisan. They're just going to give you the straight data.
Yeah.
And that's what Mike's talking about. The numbers, if you make $1 million or more a year in this country, or 10 million, you're loving this bill. And if you're Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all the rest of those boys, you really love this bill. But for working people, Mike, if you husband and wife work and you're both school teachers, you make 75, 80 a year, you make 160.
Yeah.
Depending on where you live and you got 2-3 kids, you got problems. And that's $160,000 a year. So if you're 75,000 a year in your household with 4 kids, you got real problems.
Yeah. And I think exactly. And to your point earlier on the Medicare piece, that this is going to be devastating, and it's going to really hurt MAGA, because that's the base that's going to lose their health care, which, again, this shows you how populist and how tribal we are. Is the expansion on a lot of this stuff. You call it Obamacare and people hate it. But these cuts to healthcare, we're going to see for the first time, if this bill gets passed, you're going to start seeing tens of millions of people starting to lose their healthcare.
So let's segue that in the last 15 minutes or so we have left, 10, 15 minutes. I want to talk about 2 things. I want to talk about your sense of things in Los Angeles, and how did what appeared to me sitting in Virginia and watching my television with tons of relatives in California. Very peaceful, minor. You always have some rabble rousers. You have some people that come out. That's with every protest. But it seems to me it was relatively pretty sedate and peaceful. It was nothing like January 6th. So talk to me about that. How did we get to let's deploy the National Guard over the objections of the commander-in-chief in California, that's Governor Newsom. Yep. And then we're going to bring in the Marines? Yeah. Like, help us understand what's going on the ground and how the hell we got to Marines being deployed against civilians in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act.
Yeah, so let's start with the size and scope of what's actually happening in LA, because that's important. And to your point, there's a lot of people who are like watching Fox News or watching a lot of other media. I'm not going to just blame Fox News, although it's particularly them, who think like LA is on the brink of falling into, a dystopian nightmare. This is a very small contained area. We're talking about a 3 to 4 blocks, not miles, 3 to 4 block area where this activity is happening. I have an office in Los Angeles that my partner runs. I talk to reporters all day, every day that are stationed in Los Angeles. I've got clients within blocks of this going on. Everyone's like, the eeriest part is how quiet and calm it is because no one's going outside. The ICE raids have kind of frozen the whole community, but it's peaceful. It's peaceful. It's calm. It's quiet. There's nothing going on in Los Angeles with the exception of a few small square areas. And I hate to be crass and put it this way, Sophia, but you'll appreciate this. Like, I'm from LA. We know how to riot. Like we had the Watts riots in 65. We had the Rodney King riots in 92. We've seen our city burn. This is not even the size of a 10th of a Lakers championship. Like,
I can't hang out with those Eagles fans. They'll beat you down.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is not anywhere near like any major city winning a sports championship. It's not. And so why is what's happening? The answer is because Donald Trump wants the escalation. He wants the conflict. Trumpism requires violence and conflict because that allows him to establish this law and order frame. It's why he's doing a military parade on Saturday. It's why this show of force is everything, and he's going to incite and provoke the other side. Look, there are a lot of professional agitators on the left. There are that are just looking for a fight. Every day, the protests are peaceful and they're quiet during the day because that's when people who are voicing their opinions, peacefully demonstrating, speaking out. That's the way you should do it as an American. At night, that's not what's happening. You're not seeing suburban moms and dads out there, protesting in the middle of the night. Those are professional paid agitators bent on destroying and provoking equally law enforcement and soldiers into a greater chaotic.
However, I don't want to miss what ICE is doing because it's despicable and deplorable.
Yeah.
You're covering up your damn face with masks. You go into schools. You're going to hospitals. You're going to court where people are trying to actually comply with the law.
Churches.
They need to do to churches now. And so what I'm saying is there is this white nationalist extremist, the same people that wrestled down Senator Padilla, and I want to switch to that.
Yeah.
Who don't give a damn who you are or what you are. You just look brown and you look black in this country, and that's it. Let's talk about what happened with Senator Padilla. Thoughts?
Yeah. Can I ask you one question first, real quick? I did not know that you could legally wear a face mask as law enforcement in this country.
You can't, and you should not. You have to identify yourself. That's why if a policeman either pulls you over, there's a badge, or comes to your door, hey, here, I'm with the FBI.
Yeah.
Service. You have to identify yourself because you don't know who's coming to your door. And when you're going to deprive me of my rights, my life, liberty, and my property, particularly my liberty under the due process 14th Amendment, right? If you're going to do that, you better damn well identify yourself. I better know who you are. You're masked up. For what reason? We don't just snatch people off the streets in the United States of America and then deport them without due process of law. That's called kidnapping, Mike.
Yeah. So is that legal? Is what they're doing legal?
No, it's not legal. And that's why you have all these legal cases. And God bless Gavin Newsom, man. He's been a badass over the last few days. And in their face, Judge Breyer's opinion for California was great. Then the Court of Appeals overturned it. It'll be interesting to see what the Supreme Court does. I have no faith in them at all anymore. So I don't know where we're going to end up on this. But it is clear under the 10th Amendment that the governor of California activates and controls the guard and has to call the president and say, hey, I need help. I need you to activate the guard, and only under the most extreme circumstances, under the Insurrection Act and suspending posse comitatus, can you bring in the Marines or the Army to police civilians.
Yeah.
Only Lincoln has done that. I mean,
well, yeah, the court, the ruling, Breyer's ruling basically said this doesn't even come close to rebellion.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Spin habeas corpus, again, I don't want to get too lawyerly here, which, we tend to do as lawyers. But back to Padilla. Talk to me about what you saw and how that happens.
So it's important to understand two things. The first is, this event that the press conference that Kristi Noem, the cabinet secretary for the Homeland Security, held was in a federal building. It is the same federal building where U.S. Senator Alex Padilla has his office. And it's important because you have to understand that before the cabinet secretary held an event there, especially during these times, there's a massive security sweep that goes on to see who's in the building, what's going on. So they clearly knew that the senator was in the building. They knew who he was. And what was that?
Escorted him to where she was.
Precisely. So everybody knew who he was, what was going on, and how this was all going down. But the other thing I want people to understand this too is I've known Alex since we were in our 20s, since we were kids together. And I don't want to overstate our relationship. It's not like we go on vacations together, but we know each other very well. I've worked with him many, many, many times over the past 25 years.
It's very impressive. MIT.
He's an MIT graduate. He's the son of Mexican immigrants. His father was a cook. His mother was a maid. He grew up in Pacoima, which is an extremely lower income, middle class community, overwhelmingly of Latino, primarily Mexican descent. Right over the hill from me, where I grew up in Ventura County. We grew up Southern California kids. He comes back. He becomes the youngest Los Angeles City Council member president in this city's history. Serves 8 years in the state Senate, 8 years as Secretary of State, and then becomes appointed U.S. Senator. All of this to say, the one key characteristic you need to know about Alex Padilla is he's the most measured, calm, staid personality, not even as a politician, but as a person that I know.
Big family man too.
His entire persona is a calm demeanor. I've never seen him get engaged the way that he was or have to fight back in that way. For the main reason is this is not a performance theatrical politician. He's not looking to make headlines ever. My criticism to him was, you need to get out there more, brother. If you want to be elected in California, you're going to have to be a little bit more bombastic. So to see what was happening, anybody who knows Alex is just stricken by it because it's so it doesn't, like, Alex would never be in that situation. And I say that not because he was doing it, but because he was reacting to defend himself.
He was still being a gentleman, because I'd have called them all kind of, I got a potty mouth. I would have called them all kind of names. Senator or not, it would have been viral. He was a gentleman even when they were being disgusting.
And the language, he lunged at me. Kristi Noem is, this brown man came at me. He lunged at me. He was attacking me. This is all the same. I got a text rather from a dear friend, Latina involved in politics from LA, who said, if there's any doubt that we are viewed because of our education level as MIT or socioeconomic status as a U.S. Senator as anything other than the way they perceive all of us, there are no special people of color. You are a black and brown person. You are not white. You do not have standing in this country. How dare you?
And they never see our credentials or our title.
Nope.
Look, Barack
Obama.
He's speaking State of the Union. And Joe Wilson of South Carolina with his little Confederate butt decides he's going to holler out, liar. Nobody other than going back to the Civil War days has ever talked like that in the middle of a State of the Union. But they did it to the first black president because he thought he could do it.
No one dragged Joe Wilson out of there.
No, sure didn't. And Marjorie Taylor Greene heckling Biden, and nobody dragged her out.
No one dragged her out. And so, look. Yeah. And so we do have a different perception. His only violation or crime was being of color. He's a brown guy walking in there. Yep. And I think, LA Times ran a great article, a column on just this today. So the fact that everyone is thinking it, whether it's, you or me or LA Times columnists or people in Los Angeles, like I said, there's a lot of people who have thought we're sort of in a post-racial society or that America is treating people differently. It's not. It's too deeply ingrained in our DNA.
Well, let's segue and finish up with the question I think everybody wants to know the answer to, which is, we talked about it's 5 months in. We've got a long way to go until next November 2026.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the midterms and how you see everything from Israel and Iran. God only knows how that escalates. Trump has got the world in chaos right now.
Yeah.
Do we get to 2026 and that's our sesquicentennial? We turn 250 years old. Thoughts?
Yeah, we're going to get there. It's not going to be fun. This is going to be a very difficult time in American history. It's much more difficult than the first term, but we will get there. I also believe, I'm very optimistic, we will get beyond this. We will be a stronger, better people for this excruciatingly difficult, torturous time. I mean, the Civil War was obviously a horrible, horrible time, and we became a better people. Not a perfect people, but more perfect. And the goal for America is to always to try to become more perfect, and it takes struggle. It takes fight. It just does. Now, the fundamentals of this race, and again, it's very, very early right now, look very, 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 very good for the Democrats. And it's not just the historical trend line, which looks very good. It's the changing nature of the Democratic base, which is becoming whiter, more progressive, more college educated, more well-informed, much higher propensity voters in a turnout midterm election. That's another good sign. It's a bigger existential question about the Democratic Party, but the turnout model looks very good. Then the issues matrix, which is really, really key. Trump is doing bad on the economy. Very likely that we slip into a recession and things get worse. Inflationary pressures are on the rise. The world is in chaos. There's crackdowns in the streets. There's going to be a huge national protest again Saturday, the same day he's got his military parade. There's probably going to be, unrest provoked in large part by the right wing in this country because they want violence. They want, MAGA fighting, people of color in these protests. They want all that. That's how they win. The chaos, it looks like it's damaging him, and it is in the polls. But when it comes,
right? I saw
yeah, I mean, anytime, it's very, very rare that Trump has dropped below his solid floor of support at 40%. It's extremely rare. He's down below that number now across basically any poll that's looking. He's below that number. These are bad numbers. Now, the midterms are a long time away. That's, I guess, if it just crass politics, set aside everything else, that's the good news politically if you want to see him removed politically. The bad news is, first of all, the Democratic brand is still really, really bad. And the second is Trump does thrive and look for that chaotic environment because he uses the heavy hand of law and order and blame that it's not him doing it, it's everybody else causing these problems. So you need an even heavier hand for him to come in and start smashing opposition. And there is a resonant argument to that, especially when you start to see destruction. If cars start getting burned, looting starts to happen, riots starts to break out, he comes in and says, law and order, you heard this, South Carolina or Florida sheriff yesterday saying you'll be graveyard dead if you try that stuff in Florida. Like these guys start to puff their chest up and start, cracking down. And
I saw Youngkin here in Virginia. Of course, Mr. Anyway.
Yeah.
He was more benign about, yes, you have the right to protest. Yes, you have the sacred right to do these things. But let me be clear, any violations, you're getting arrested, you're going to jail. Fine. But they always feel the need to press up, like you said, and be the bully.
Not only that, but even just saying that, it's the insinuation that you can't protest without being violent.
Yes.
We know you're violent people. We know this is anti-American. We know that you're really Antifa and trying to overthrow the government, right. That if you're anti-Republican, you're anti-American. So if you go ahead and protest, but let's be really clear. When you start turning violent, we're going to start turning violent.
Yeah, and violence is a subjective term, which
we
saw in Los Angeles, because, again, you and I are old enough to remember absolutely the Rodney King riots and everything else that we've seen, the protests with George Floyd, all of this. LA looks nothing like that, and certainly nothing like January the 6th. So, Mike, I want to wrap it with this. Tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah.
And folks, make sure you buy a copy of the Latino Century, outstanding book, Simon & Schuster. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes, anywhere you buy books. But Mike, tell us a little about where people can find you and, what you do.
Well, thank you. Thanks for that plug. I want everybody to know that Sophia was one who really encouraged me to write a book too. So I owe you for this book, The Latino Century. You can buy it on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. It's a Simon & Schuster published book that talks about a lot of these changing dynamics. But where I'm living most of the time now, Sophia, is on Substack. My Substack is called The Great Transformation. I write a lot, probably 3 or 4 essays a week on these changing society and what it means politically. It's a free newsletter. And I do a lot of live videos too as things break to go over the latest polling data to explain what's happening.
Well, I tell you what, Mike, thank you for what you do. Because I think that in this space, and I love the book, The Latino Century, because you're right. The Latino community and population will be the majority minority in the next, 10 years, 15 years?
15
like
years.
So that's another problem. And that's another conversation for another day that we need to get into and have some alcohol with us when we get back. Because part of that is the pushback that you see from these MAGA folks. That's the underbelly of the beast, folks, that we didn't get into today, but we will get into. And so, Mike, again, thank you. Keep doing what you do. And our prayers are with you guys out in California, because I know it's rough out there right now.
It's rough. It's no surprise that it was, Gavin Newsom and Alex Padilla kind of in the last 72 hours leading the fight, because it's gotten untenable. It's pushback now. There's no more negotiations, and that's basically what they're saying.
Good leaders, and I want to have you back on at some point in the fall. I want to talk about the governor's race that's coming up and whether or not you think Harris will put her hat in. I actually think she is going to run, but we'll have to see.
Let's talk about it then.
All right. Bye, Mike.
Good. Thank you for having me.
You bet.